I gotta say, I'm really excited to bring in our next guest. He's a former journalist and media executive, Steve Krakauer, and he's written a fantastic book about a subject that we pay a lot of attention to here on the U.S. Report, namely the American media. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. I gotta say, as someone who loves the media but thinks it's got a lot of problems, that your manuscript really hit home. Welcome to the program, and we have talked a lot about it on this show, but you open up your book talking about that laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop, and how it was instantly decided almost by the hive mind that it was false, despite heaps of evidence to the contrary. And I would love to just get your thoughts, first of all, on how this sort of thinking is affecting democracy in America.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that. I agree. I think the Hunter Biden laptop story really is so emblematic of all the problems that we have with the press over the last few years that started maybe with the election of Donald Trump in 2016, shocked the media system because they didn't know anyone who would possibly vote for Donald Trump. But it continued more into what we've seen since then, which I think the Hunter Biden laptop story showed us, which was this kind of anti-speech activism in the press. We saw it with COVID. We saw it with the laptop. This idea that this sort of information is too toxic to even get into. It's potential misinformation or disinformation. So we need to keep it from the public's eyes. And we saw that in the way that the tech platforms worked with the intel agencies here in America to have this sort of collusion to suppress and silence it. But then the media joined in as well because they refused to call out these tech platforms that censored the New York Post, that made it so you can't share this link. And I believe it really was the beginning of this new era of an even more dangerous form of suppression and media malpractice.
And I mean, look, we're going to talk a bit more about the Twitter files and all of that in a moment, but you also say that even before Trump, things started to get weird with the Ferguson riots in 2014. Remind us about that case and what started to happen to journalism then and during the Obama administration.
Yeah, this is really where I start the book also with 2014 and something that we saw, which ended up becoming kind of narrative over facts. And the Ferguson riots came out of what happened with Michael Brown. And for anyone who knows this story, you may remember the phrase, hands up, don't shoot. That just became this rallying cry as something that Michael Brown was said to have said before he was shot and killed by a police officer named Darren Wilson. It became this real racial justice moment in America, one of the first of this latest movement that we saw. And what happened was a year later, the Obama Department of Justice found that that never happened. He never said, hands up, don't shoot. Instead, he ran at the officer, grabbed for the gun, and that's the circumstances to it. But we never really got that reporting. Instead, the media themselves even went and said, as far as to say, it wasn't so much about if that phrase was ever actually said, it was about the movement that it inspired. And it became this point where journalists became activists, but also became afraid of what might happen on social media because of the way that you have to be acceptable in the way you cover something. It really was the beginning of this new era of all the problems that we saw during the Trump era, but it actually did really begin before that.